Meet Choi Hyunseok, once the world's strongest man, heavyweight champion, and undisputed king of trash talk. Hyunseok had it all: fame, glory, and enough muscles to make statues jealous. Then, life pulled a sneaky uppercut. He died. Now he's reborn in a magical world as a hero. Jackpot, right? Time to hoard gold, charm princesses, and bask in eternal glory. Except his grand debut starts with a nightmare beast, a hulking monstrosity with claws for days, and a head bigger than his championship belt. Hero? Are you the so-called hero? Hyunseok barely keeping it together. Maybe? Turns out he's the hero nobody ordered, trying not to die again in a world where everything seems designed to kill him. Monsters, mayhem, and bad life decisions await. Will he crush the odds or end up as a monster's snack? The story begins in a desolate landscape where men in pristine white uniforms are tilling the ground. Clearly, this isn't their weekend gardening club. Someone barks in order to bring up the water, and soon a line of miserable souls is formed, sloshing buckets like overworked mules. Perched on the edge of a tiny cliff, a creature, some hybrid of a goblin and a corporate middle manager, snarls, "Move faster, slaves!" Meanwhile, one poor sap hauling a log with a literal goblin on his back laments his life. As if the endless lashes ripping into his skin weren't already a clue, he's generously informing us that the life of a slave sucks. Thanks for the update, pal. Cut to the highlight reel of our protagonist, Choi Hyunseok, once the world's greatest MMA fighter. This powerhouse obliterated opponents with the grace of a wrecking ball. Undefeated at 23 wins, 0 losses, and crowned the champion of champions, he retired with a shiny title belt and enough savings to never have to punch another human for a paycheck again. But life had other plans. Enter Truck-kun, the divine arbiter of fate who promptly flattens Choi into the next life. For all his fighting prowess, dodging traffic wasn't in his repertoire. In death's waiting room, Choi isn't taking things well. His hard-earned retirement fund, gone. His dreams of a quiet life, smashed. Also, he's still a virgin, a fact he loudly laments to no one in particular. About 30 minutes into this pity party, he starts finding some silver linings. No more brutal training, no more fights, and hey, no grieving family or friends. Who needs love when you have existential peace? Just as he's settling into ghostly despair, an arm bursts into view. Attached to it is Rachel, an angel who looks like she moonlights as a lingerie model. She apologizes for being late like she just missed brunch and declares Choi an SSS class hero. Confused but definitely distracted by her ahem assets, Choi barely registers the sales pitch. Rachel offers him 2 choices. 1. Reincarnate as some tragic loser in the next life. Or 2. Resurrect as a hero in another world, destined for glory, riches, and an absurd amount of attractive women. Oh, and no pressure, but the second option is totally a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Choi, naturally skeptical, mumbles something about needing time to think. But Rachel isn't just any angel. She's a recruiter on a tight deadline. She ramps up the persuasion, painting a tantalizing picture. Fame, fortune, adoring fans, and hey, maybe a farmer will throw in his hot daughter as a bonus. Choi isn't buying it. Instead, he zones out, wondering if dying peacefully and skipping the whole hero gig would be less exhausting. Sensing her bonus slipping away, Rachel flips into overdrive. She pulls out Plan B, guilt-tripping. Fine, she snaps. Go ahead and die as a lonely old bachelor. Who needs a second chance, right? That does it. Choi panics. He clings to her leg like a toddler at a candy store, wailing, "I'll do it." Rachel, ever the professional, plays coy. "Oh, I didn't hear you, Tilda," she teases, relishing the desperation. Choi screams louder, practically signing his soul away, and Rachel's grin turns positively devilish. A magic circle materializes beneath him, and before Choi can demand a briefing or even a snack break, Rachel sends him hurtling into the great unknown. Her job done, Rachel takes a call, casually reporting that prospective hero #137-421 has been successfully transmigrated. That bonus, she chirps, probably plotting her next sales pitch. The scene shifted as a faint voice called out to Choi Hyunseok. "Open your eyes, or wake up," he heard, groggy and disoriented. His first thought, the village chief, obviously here to grovel and offer his supermodel daughter, called it. Plot development 101. Instead, he was greeted by a swift punch to the stomach, the universal alarm clock of hell. His first instinct was to retaliate, growling, "You got a death wish." But that urge quickly fizzled out when he saw his attacker, a creature wearing a wild bull skull with horns. Not exactly the generous villager vibe he was expecting. Still clinging to the thread of denial, he timidly stammered, "I'm the hero?" The creature cocked its head and sneered, "Heroes are stupid these days, huh?" That line hit harder than the punch. Wait, did Rachel set me up? No way, angels don't do that. Right? Determined to make sense of this madness, Choi decided to act. And by act, he meant kicking the creature square in the chest, yelling, "Die!" For a brief moment, he was proud, until the creature effortlessly caught his foot mid-air. The boar skull brute sighed, muttering something about self-proclaimed heroes and why they never shut up, before clenching a fist the size of a watermelon. Oh, great. My heroic journey's off to a stellar start. Next thing he knew, Choi was locked up in an underground prison. He pounded on the door, screaming for a rematch. Bad idea. A goblin guard flung the door open, holding a sword and looking like he just rolled out of bed. Who the hell is quacking like that? Choi, now face to face with a literal murder gremlin, decided to change his tone real quick. Sorry, sir, won't happen again." The goblin snarled, "Keep it up, and your soup." Choi nodded furiously, throwing in a salute for good measure. "Yes, sir. No soup, sir." As the goblin shuffled off, Choi slumped against the wall, muttering about how this otherworld nonsense had gone completely off the rails. He groaned, "If this keeps up, I'm going to die a virgin again." From a small window, a voice called out, "Hey, newcomer." Choi perked up, peering through to see a fellow Korean. Finally, a familiar face in this dumpster fire of a world. "Sunbaenim." Choi greeted him with desperate enthusiasm, bowing through the bars. The man seemed amused by the respect, but his words were anything but reassuring. "This, my friend, is the Demon King's army fortress. Congratulations, you're a slave now." Choi's jaw dropped. "Wait, what?" The man casually explained that this fortress was essentially where dreams and self-proclaimed heroes go to die. Apparently, there were hundreds of would-be saviors crammed into this hellhole, all of them starting their heroic journey with a side of hard labor and lashings. When Choi pressed for answers, the man gave a chilling explanation. The fortress was run by two nightmares, a red cow-headed beast named Reed Run and a goblin gar called Yark, both infamous for their cruelty. But that wasn't even the worst part. The man leaned in and muttered, "It's all Rachel's fault." Choi froze. "Wait, Rachel as in the angel?" The man nodded. "Yup, wicked demon, that one. She sent us to the wrong place. Instead of starting in some nice little village with chickens and hot daughters, she dropped us straight into the Demon King's backyard." Choi's face contorted in horror as the realization hit him like a truck. "You're telling me we weren't supposed to start here?" "Exactly," the man replied with a shrug. "Most heroes get cushy starts in peaceful cities or idyllic villages. We got this hellhole. Why? Because Rachel screwed us over." Choi's eye twitched. The mental image of Rachel's angelic face, now framed with devil horns and a mocking smirk, flooded his mind. His hysteria boiled over. "Are you kidding me?" The man chuckled darkly. "Welcome to the club, rookie." A few days later, the 2nd Slave Squad under the 3rd Battalion of the Demon King's army resembled a badly directed dystopian parody. Humans were forced into brutal labor, all while chanting the goblins' personal anthem. "Let's crush the humans, let's devour the humans." Sure, nothing like some forced cannibalistic karaoke to boost morale. Choi Hyunseok trudged along, trembling under the weight of a log the size of his shattered dreams. As if that wasn't enough, a goblin perched atop the log, gleefully jingling a bell to signal the end of the day's torment. The goblin's parting advice: "Get some rest, weaklings." Such heartwarming mentorship. Back in his cell, Choi slumped against the wall, muttering to himself, "You know, prison's not half bad. No goblin cheerleaders, no logs, and the rats don't try to sit on me." He sighed, remembering Rachel's grand promises of special hero privileges. If this was privileged, he couldn't imagine what regular heroes got. Curiosity sparked a memory. In every good fantasy world, there's always a status window. "Status window," he called out, and to his surprise it appeared. His stats blinked into existence. Strength, 28. Stamina, 1. It was like being a jacked, wheezing old man. The other prisoner, his self-proclaimed Sunbei, was shocked. 28 strength at level 1. His eyes widened in awe. "You might actually have a shot at escaping." Choi glanced at him, deadpan. "Yeah, and I'm sure I'll fly us out of here on a magical unicorn, too." He laid down, feigning sleep, inwardly fuming over how stuck at level 1 was somehow his legacy. Late at night, curiosity got the better of him, and he reopened the status window. 2 things stood out: mana and the mysterious hero points. The latter seemed important, and as if summoned by sheer irritation, Rachel materialized in a flash of light. "Long time no see," she chirped, pouting like a child caught red-handed. She teased, "Should I tell you about hero points, or maybe I'll just keep it to myself?" Choi's patience snapped. He grabbed the pocket-sized angel like a stress ball, eyes blazing with suppressed rage. "Hero points, status, whatever. Forget all that. What matters right now is payback." Moments later, Rachel dangled from a makeshift fishing pole, bound and helpless, her wings fluttering uselessly. "I'm sorry. I spilled coffee on the magic circles, okay? I didn't mean to send you here," she wailed, her excuses as flimsy as her logic. Choi narrowed his eyes. "So let me get this straight. My life is ruined because you couldn't handle a latte?" Rachel explained her punishment. She was now Choi's personal fairy, bound to him until he defeated the Demon King. "Oh, and by the way, you can command me to do anything," she said, trying to sound cheerful but visibly dying inside. "Perfect," Choi sneered. "You're helping me escape." "Fine," Rachel huffed, clearly wishing she'd spilled coffee on anyone but this lunatic. The next day, things went from bad to worse. Goblins dragged Choi to Reed Run, the red cow-headed overlord. Sitting smugly at his desk, Reed Run did the unthinkable. He complimented Choi's work ethic. "You've been working so hard lately," he mused. "How would you like to be the head slave?" Choi blinked. "Head slave? What next? Employee of the month?" Rachel, hovering invisibly beside him, whispered furiously, "Decline! Heroes don't grovel to demons." But before Choi could reject, Reed Run's assistant, Yark, raised an eyebrow. What was that noise? Panicking, Choi slammed his head onto the desk in an exaggerated bow, yelling, "Leave it to me. I'll whip the humans into shape." Reed Run beamed. "I like your spirit. Do well, and I'll recommend you for the Demon King's army." As the meeting ended, Choi shuffled out, his soul crushed under the weight of his promotion. The humans chanted monotonously under the blazing sun, their voices a perfect blend of despair and futility. Meanwhile, Choi Hyunseok strutted around like a wannabe drill sergeant who just got his whistle. He stopped in front of one struggling worker, clicking his tongue in disapproval. "Even my grandma can run faster than that, and she's been dead for years," he barked, arms crossed with an exaggerated smugness that screamed future villain material. The system window popped up, smugly informing him that his hidden ability, charisma, had increased from his leadership. Choi Hyunseok gasped theatrically. "Being the head slave is the best." The men nearby exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of pity and disbelief. "He's lost it," one whispered. "Gone full goblin," said another. Rachel materialized beside him, her face a picture of outrage. "What the hell are you doing? If this keeps up, they'll chain you to the fortress walls for good." Choi hushed her with a dismissive wave. "Trust the process, tiny sparrow. You wouldn't understand the grand strategy of a phoenix like me." When one of the workers collapsed, Choi Hyunseok sprang into action, not with aid, of course, but with a scolding. "Get up. Do you think Readrun promotes slackers?" The system chimed in again, notifying him that Readrun's favorability had increased. Choi gave an exaggerated salute in the direction of the fortress. "Thank you, oh great overlord," he bellowed. Rachel face-palmed so hard it echoed. "You wanted to escape 2 days ago. Remember? Adventures, freedom." Choi scratched his head. "Yeah, but the system said to play nice. And as a hero, following the system is my sacred duty." "Sacred duty?" Rachel screeched. "You're trying to impress the enemy. That's not how this works. And that system message is fishy. Systems don't use toilet paper metaphors." Choi waved her off again. "It's legit. Maybe it's an SSS-level hero system. You wouldn't get it." As Rachel sputtered in disbelief, Choi recalled the bizarre system quest from the night before. The message had been oddly specific, likening his predicament to running out of toilet paper in a public restroom. It concluded with the uplifting declaration that a true hero must learn to use their enemies. His goal? Earn Readrun's favor and gain 100 hero points. And boy, was he nailing it. Jock dragged Choi Hyunseok into Readrun's office, where the Horned Overseer greeted him with unexpected praise. "The slave's productivity has increased drastically." Choi bowed so low it looked like he was searching for dropped coins. "It's nothing really. All thanks to your excellent leadership, sir," Rachel whispered in his ear. "Cheap flattery won't work." But, to her horror, Readrun's lips twitched into a pleased grin. The system window gleamed triumphantly. "Favor ability goal reached. Quest complete. 100 hero points earned. Beginner hero store unlocked." Choi straightened, blinking in surprise. "Wait, it actually worked?" Rachel gawked at the floating text. "What the hell? That's not supposed to happen." Buoyed by his success, Choi Hyunseok pivoted to the next step in his absurd plan. "Sir," he began, feigning sincerity so well it could win awards, "I have an idea to make things even better. What if I start training the slaves?" Readrun raised a skeptical brow. "Training? Humans are too weak to work and train at the same time." "Oh, but imagine this," Choi said, leaning in with the excitement of a used car salesman. "Slaves moving in perfect unison, disciplined and efficient, doing the work of 3 people without a hint of laziness. The fortress could be completed in a week." Readrun scratched his chin, clearly intrigued. Choi pushed harder. "The commander will sing your praises, sir. They might even promote you." The demon's ego swelled and he nodded. "Fine, you may proceed." Back in their cozy dungeon, which could double as a set for a budget horror film, Rachel paced like an unhinged actor in a tragedy. Her hands flailed as she lamented, My hero has lost his mind. First he grovels to the Demon King's army, and now he's training the slaves. Training, we're doomed. Choi Hyunseok pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling through gritted teeth. Rachel, for the love of all things holy or unholy, could you stop being so loud? Do you want the guards to come and join your pity party? She spun on her heel, glaring at him. Do you have a plan, or are you just winging it again? Because I swear, if you're making a fool out of me— Choi smirked, his sarcasm sharper than a demon's blade. Do I look like you to you? He straightened, channeling his inner schemer. Here's the deal. I'm planning a rebellion. The fortress has 3,000 human slaves, and the Demon King's army, only about 500 more soldiers. If we stir up enough chaos, we can call for backup from the Human Alliance base nearby. It's a win-win. Freedom and vengeance. Rachel's eyes sparkled like a kid hearing about candy for the first time. You're not completely brain-dead after all. Later, Choi Hyunseok checked his hero points, grinning smugly. See, I told you the quest wasn't a scam, and now I have access to the hero store. Rachel squinted at him. So what are you going to get? A legendary weapon? Magic armor? Tell me it's not something dumb. Choi scrolled through the list with the enthusiasm of a child unwrapping socks on Christmas morning. His excitement evaporated instantly. Hold your breath. F rank. Helps you hold your breath better. Shit. Holding C rank. Enables you to hold your shit longer. He squinted at the screen, his voice dripping with disbelief. Shit holding should have been S rank, especially in public bathrooms. Rachel doubled over, laughing. That's what you get from a level 1 store. You're shopping at the Dollar Tree of hero skills. Choi turned on her, his patience snapping like a twig. Shut up, you swindling fairy. When I save us, I'm leaving you behind. The next day, Choi Hyunseok stood before the slaves, commanding them to salute and sing the Third Army Corps song. We, the great Demon King's army, let's defeat humans. Let's eat humans. Forget all suffering. When you catch them, life's the best. Nothing under the sky is greater than the Demon King's affection. Reedrun, the demon army officer, watched from his balcony, nodding approvingly. A wise decision letting Choi Hyunseok train the slaves, he muttered, clearly missing the irony. Meanwhile, Yark burst into his room, visibly panicked. Sir, the human army is advancing. The 8th Division has fallen into their trap, and they're retreating. It's only a matter of time before those bastards arrive here. Reedrun didn't flinch. Instead, he sighed like a dad tired of his kids' antics. War, Yark, is a battle of supplies. Never lose a competent supply officer. He cracked his knuckles. You evacuate. I'll handle Choi Hyunseok and catch up later. Outside, the human army charged with their spears, yelling about victory being near. Choi Hyunseok, oblivious to the chaos, glanced at his status window, grumbling about his barely improved stats. I need a miracle, or maybe a random explosion to level up. And then, like fate answering his sarcastic plea, Reedrun landed beside him with a ground-shaking thud. Choi Hyunseok, he barked, gripping his shoulder. No time, you're coming with me. Choi's jaw dropped. Wait, what? Where? Why? Before Reedrun could explain, the commander of the human army shouted for his troops to attack. Chaos erupted as humans charged, spears clashing with demon steel. But then the humans met their nightmare, Reedrun. A soldier yelled, Die, you red bastard, and lunged. Reedrun casually caught his head mid-charge and crushed it like a melon. Choi Hyunseok froze, his brain short-circuiting. Reedrun's moves were pure devastation. He slammed a human into the ground with his 7th movement, followed by an explosive destruction wave, sending human soldiers flying like ragdolls. The earth trembled, and Choi felt the vibrations in his very soul. Reedrun turned to him, surprisingly calm after the massacre. Are you all right? Choi Hyunseok saluted automatically, his survival instincts kicking in. "Yes, sir." The reclaimed human territory was bustling with activity, not from celebration, but from the grim organization of war. 2 flags fluttered in the center of the chaos, one for the Marriott Kingdom and the other for the Drasin Empire. Soldiers barked orders like irritable babysitters, guiding a grim procession of captives into neatly sorted lines. "Are you warriors?" a soldier asked one of Choi Hyunseok's former cellmates, a burly man with the swagger of someone who definitely wanted to say yes. "Yes," the man replied, puffing his chest. "Perfect," the soldier smirked, and the so-called warriors were led down a different path, presumably to a special treatment area. Spoiler alert, special treatment wasn't dinner and a medal. Enter Olaven Grimier, commander of the Allied forces, striding in like a midlife crisis Thor with his fiery red hair and beard. A soldier approached, her thigh reporting with military precision. "Evacuation complete, sir. We've also drafted those calling themselves warriors." "Excellent," Olaven boomed, praising the soldier. Then, with the casual demeanor of a man ordering coffee, he gave the command, "Annihilate all the warriors." Meanwhile, in the world's least fun carriage ride, Choi Hyunseok stared morosely out of the window, bidding farewell to his dreams of adventure and a second life. In front of him, Reincarnated, the Red Nightmare himself, sat casually, as if decapitating pursuers earlier was just a warm-up. Choi sulked, recalling how Reincarnated had obliterated all their attackers without breaking a sweat. No more chasers, but also no more hope. Rachel, ever the beacon of unwanted optimism, chirped, "In crises, there are always opportunities. Let's head to HQ and figure out the Demon King Army's situation." "Rachel," Choi snapped, "shut up." Reincarnated suddenly stirred, yawning like a lion waking from a nap. Did you say something?" Caught off guard, Choi plastered on a fake smile. "Oh, no, sir. Just mumbling about how honored I am to travel with you." Reincarnated smiled, an expression so rare it should have been documented. "I'm glad you feel that way. We're almost at the 3rd Corps HQ. You'll love it there." Love wasn't the word Choi had in mind, especially when Reincarnated casually mentioned, "You'll officially enlist in the Demon King's army." Choi turned pale but forced out a strangled, "It's an honor." Rachel, on the other hand, was on the verge of cardiac arrest. At the HQ gates, Reincarnated announced himself, and the guards swung the massive doors open. "Follow me," he ordered Choi. "We're going straight to the commander." As they marched, Reincarnated leaned in and muttered, "Be careful with the commander. One wrong move and you're dead, but no pressure." Choi gulped, recalling the saying about keeping your wits even in a tiger's den. "Don't give up," he whispered to himself. The commander's quarters were intimidating, but not as much as the person within. The voice that beckoned them inside was distinctly feminine, and Choi Hyunseok found himself wondering if the commander was human. Then he saw her, Hemis, the 3rd Corps commander. She lounged like a queen on her throne, wearing stilettos and a smug smirk. Her long ears, claw-like nails, and strange complexion made her look otherworldly, dangerously alluring. Her eyes were obscured, adding to her air of mystery. "Welcome back, Reincarnated," she purred, her voice dripping with menace and charm. "I see you've bulked up even more." Choi Hyunseok blushed, his thoughts spiraling into absurdity. "Wait, what? How is someone this hot a demon commander?" No, Reincarnated bowed slightly. "Your beauty grows sharper by the day." "Flatterer," Hemis teased, though she clearly enjoyed it. Choi panicked. Should he compliment her too? You're very..." He stopped himself, realizing he'd probably sound like a stuttering idiot. Reincarnated explained the situation with the fortress, lamenting his failure to protect it. Hemis dismissed his self-recrimination with a chilling smile. "It's that incompetent fool from the 8th Division. I should have turned his skin into a handbag already." Choi held his breath, trying not to scream. "This is a nightmare." Hemis's tone turned venomous as she mentioned the 8th Division commander's cowardly retreat. Her presence alone was more terrifying than anything Choi had encountered. The conversation shifted to Choi Hyunseok. Reedrun introduced him as the human I mentioned. Hemis tilted her head, her grin widening. Cute. She leaned closer, making Choi sweat bullets. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do, little human. Choi stammered. I'll do my best. Hemis's smile turned wicked. With a body like yours, you won't last long. Reedrun, don't you agree? Reedrun nodded grimly. He'll be devoured, literally and figuratively. Humans joining our army is unprecedented. Hemis dismissed the idea of Reedrun training Choi personally. You can't waste your time on this one. Suddenly, her body began to shift grotesquely. Her head transformed into a nightmarish flower of flesh, filled with teeth and a disturbingly long tongue. Choi's jaw dropped as Hemis shoved her arm into her mouth, pulling out a horrifying black dog-like creature. This is Bobo, she said sweetly, cradling the abomination. Isn't he cute? Choi stared at the thing in disbelief. Cute? This thing looks like it crawled straight out of hell. In his language, Bobo meant stupid, which made the situation feel like a cruel cosmic joke. From this moment on, you're Bobo's caretaker, Hemis declared. Don't forget to feed him. He gets cranky when he's hungry, and I'm tired of replacing caretakers. He keeps eating them. Reedrun examined Bobo with curiosity. Immense power even as a baby, he remarked. Choi Hyunseok forced a grin. It's an honor to take care of Bobo, he lied through his teeth, all while wondering how long he'd survive his new pet job. Hemis handed Bobo over, and the creature snarled, its eyes glowing ominously. Choi gulped, praying he wouldn't become its next meal. At Bobo's house, the chaos began early. Rachel was shrieking like a banshee after spotting a new hero quest window. There's a new quest, she exclaimed, her voice loud enough to wake the dead. Or worse, Bobo. Shut up, Choi Hyunseok hissed, glaring at her. Do you want to wake him up? The system window loomed before him, mocking his existence. Hero quest, survive by earning Bobo's affection and wish for a better future. Reward 200 hero points. Choi Hyunseok stared blankly. Earn the affection of the commander's psycho pet. Great, because winning over a demonic murder dog is exactly how I imagine spending my life. Then came a knock at the door. Enter the goblin, green, wiry, and about as helpful as a toothache. Choi greeted the creature with feigned enthusiasm, silently wondering if goblin caretakers were just meals in waiting. Where are my seniors? Choi asked, hoping for a shred of guidance. The goblin blinked. Dead. All of them. You're the only one left. Dead? Choi's voice cracked. Yeah, the goblin replied casually. Anyway, you're in charge of Bobo's meals now. Good luck not dying. Before Choi could reply, a shadow loomed behind the goblin. Bobo, the adorable demon from hell, stood there licking his chops ominously. The goblin froze, then did the only logical thing. Grab Choi's leg and offer him up like a buffet special. What are you doing? Choi yelled, furious. Shut up, the goblin snapped. One of us is dying today, and it's not me. With zero hesitation, Choi pried the goblin off his leg and hurled him at Bobo. Here, snack time, he said, seething. Bobo was thrilled. He chomped down on the goblin while Choi and Rachel watched in grim silence. Rachel's only reaction? Hysteria. Minutes later, Rachel's screams echoed through the house as she ran in circles, with Bobo hot on her heels. Help me, she screeched, wings flapping desperately. Choi leaned against the wall, unimpressed. Stop running so much, he'll just get hungrier. You're not helping, she shrieked. Suddenly, Choi spotted something useful in the system store. An extra-large bone. Price, 30 hero points. Description, attracts Canada-type monsters. Perfect, Choi muttered, buying the bone. He called Bobo, waved the bone dramatically, and chucked it across the room. Bobo's eyes sparkled as he sprinted after it, tail wagging. Rachel collapsed on the floor, exhausted. "You couldn't have done that earlier." Choi shrugged smugly. "My genius takes time, Rachel." But just as Choi started celebrating his brilliance, Bobo turned on him, jaws snapping. The demon dog only grazed the hem of his shirt, but Choi got the message. The bone was merely an appetizer. Rachel, still panting, asked, Are you thinking of taking him outside?" Choi hesitated, sweat dripping down his face. Bobo's fangs gleamed menacingly as he edged closer. Choi needed to think fast, then it hit him. The magic word. "Walk!" Choi yelled. Instantly, Bobo's mood shifted. His tail wagged like crazy, and he practically hugged Choi, drooling in excitement. Outside, Choi struggled to rein in his new best friend. Bobo was energetic enough to put caffeine addicts to shame. Rachel sniffed the air, searching for food. "Let's ask that goblin," she suggested, spotting a clueless minion nearby. Approaching the goblin, Choi explained, "It's Bobo's walk time." "Where's the kitchen?" The goblin stared at Choi like he'd just sprouted wings. "A human is walking Bobo." Bobo, in full feral mode, licked the goblin's face, terrifying the poor creature. "Don't eat him, Bobo," Choi said, patting his murderous pet. "He's not worth it." The goblin, quaking in fear, pointed to the left. Kitchen's that way." Then he bolted like his life depended on it, which, to be fair, it did. Once the goblin was gone, Choi and Rachel burst into laughter. "That's a demon soldier," Rachel wheezed. "What a coward." Rachel, always practical, asked, "You're not seriously thinking of being a dog sitter forever, are you?" Choi scoffed. "Obviously not." "I've got dreams, Rachel, big ones." But when he turned back, Bobo was gone. Panic set in. "Where the hell is that dog?" Choi yelled, his voice cracking. Rachel pointed shakily to a distant figure. Bobo trotted back, blood dripping from his mouth, his belly noticeably rounder. Before Choi could scold him, a commotion erupted nearby. "Commander Regis is dead!" someone shouted. "Who did it?" Frozen in place, Choi's mind raced. Rachel, ever the voice of reason, whispered, "It's Bobo. Look at him." As goblins swarmed the area, Rachel shrieked, "Are we going to die?" "Shut up and run!" Choi yelled, sprinting toward a dead end. The goblins had him cornered, their beady eyes gleaming with bloodlust. One particularly enthusiastic goblin smirked. "I'm gonna rip his arm off and munch it like a chicken wing." Another licked his lips. Shame the commander's already half digested. I always wondered what he'd taste like. "Let's rip apart both the dog and the human," a third suggested, "and split the parts. Fair share for everyone." Choi Hyunseok's mind raced as he faced the murderous mob. Outnumbered, outclassed, and definitely out of luck, he did the only thing he could: stall for time. "How dare you!" he yelled, channeling every ounce of fake bravado. "Do you even know who the brave one here is?" The goblins paused, their murderous enthusiasm momentarily replaced by confusion. Choi lifted Bobo high into the air like a cursed Simba in a dark parody of The Lion King. "Behold, this isn't just a monster. This is Bobo." The goblins froze, blinking in collective bafflement. "What are you talking about?" one sneered. "It's just a mangy mutt." Choi's eye twitched as his indignation flared. "Just a mutt? This mangy mutt happens to be none other than the great Bobo, pet of Commander Hemis herself." A ripple of doubt spread through the group. Some goblins exchanged uneasy glances, but the skeptic in the back wasn't convinced. "Nah, you're lying. No way Hemis's pet would follow a human." "Oh, you think I'm lying?" Choi snapped. "How dare you fail to recognize greatness? Do you have no shame?" Turning to his partner in chaos, Choi pointed dramatically. "Bobo, beast mode on!" Bobo obeyed with a gleeful snarl, instantly transforming into a drooling feral menace. His eyes gleamed with hunger as he locked onto the nearest goblin. "This," Choi said smugly, "is what real fear looks like." Before the goblin could process the threat, Bobo lunged, his teeth sinking in with a sickening crunch. Blood sprayed everywhere, painting the dirt in shades of crimson. Choi watched the carnage with grim amusement. "Wow," he muttered, "a dog without a muzzle really is bloody." When Bobo finished his meal, only bones remained. Choi turned back to the remaining goblins, his expression cold. "Any other doubts about who Bobo is?" The goblins fell to their knees, trembling. We're sorry, we didn't know. Please don't let the dog eat us." Just then, a system window popped up in Choi's vision. "Achievement unlocked. With excessive charisma, you've subdued many demons. Charisma plus 10. Choi smirked. Finally, some credit where it's due. Before he could bask in his success, a voice called out from behind him. "What's all the noise about?" He turned to see none other than Commander Hemis herself. The commander was as imposing as she was nonchalant, her presence suffused with equal parts menace and intrigue. "Ah," she said, her lips curling into an amused smile. "A cute newbie doing interesting things. How delightful." Choi's face drained of color. "Oh no." Back in her office, Hemis leaned back in her chair, looking far too entertained by Choi's predicament. "So," she said, tapping her fingers on her desk, "you used my name and Bobo to survive. Clever. Very human of you." Choi bowed deeply. I've committed a grave sin, Commander." Hemis raised an eyebrow. "Sin? I was giving you a compliment. You've got guts, unlike the idiots I usually deal with." Choi blinked, unsure if he should say thank you or flee. Hemis chuckled. "You're sharp, Choi Hyunseok, but you can't keep using my name or Bobo without consequences." She explained the terms. A decisive battle within a month. Win, and she'd extend her protection for another month. Climb high enough, maybe even to battalion commander, and he'd be useful. "And if I lose?" Choi asked hesitantly. "Oh," she said with a wicked grin, "you'll wish you died in the battle instead." Realizing he had no choice, Choi nodded. "Fine, I accept." Rachel, ever the supportive companion, muttered, "Guess I'll be saying goodbye to you in a month." Choi glared at her. "Wow, thanks for the vote of confidence." Rachel shrugged. "You're the one who thought potential meant guaranteed power." "Some fairy you are," Choi grumbled. Following Hemis's pep talk, Choi found himself at the doors of what he hoped was the kitchen. Blood dripped from the edges of the frame, giving him second thoughts. Steeling himself, he pushed the doors open. Inside stood Kulkin, a red ogre-like monster wielding a cleaver the size of a tree trunk. "You must be the human Hemis talked about," Kulkan growled. "What do you want?" Choi, not daring to step further inside, replied, a snack for Bobo." Kulkan's laughter boomed through the blood-soaked room. "Bobo's caretaker changed again, huh? Too bad, no meat for you." "Why not?" Choi asked, confused and increasingly nervous. "Because," Kulkan said, "the only order I've been given is not to kill you. If you want meat, hunt it yourself." Choi's gaze drifted to the tables where goblins were chopping up. Other goblins. His stomach turned. "Hunt? What exactly?" Choi asked weakly. Kulkin grinned. "Figure it out, human. Welcome to the demon army." Choi Hyunseok stood frozen, facing a monstrosity that could only be described as a tank with tusks. This ferocious wild boar had already claimed the life of Morgan, a poor soul who mistakenly thought he was the protagonist of this story. "This is dinner prep," Choi muttered. "Feels more like a dinner massacre. Who's eating who here?" The boar pawed the ground, snorting like a freight train. Choi glanced at Rachel, who, being the pinnacle of unhelpfulness, asked, So, what's the plan? Oh, I don't know, Choi said dryly, waving a hand at the 100 bloodthirsty demons around him. Maybe we just run and hope no one notices. Oh wait, there's nowhere to run. Guess I'll just let Porky here turn me into a human kebab. Rachel tilted her head. You're in danger. Wow, really? Thanks for pointing that out, he snapped, sweat pooling under his armor. The boar charged, a furry missile of doom. The cooks, brandishing their cleavers, yelled, "For Morgan," and threw themselves at it. The result? 12 dead demons, a pile of injured ones, and a boar that looked mildly annoyed. Kulkane, the demon chef/battlefield general Duel, surveyed the carnage with a shrug. Impressive. Let's keep hunting after a quick break. Choi's jaw dropped. Impressive? 12 dead, dozens injured, and you call it impressive? Yeah, Kulkan replied, picking something out of his teeth. We'll need more meat, though. That boar wasn't big enough. While the cooks patched up their wounded comrades and themselves, Choi whispered to Rachel, "Escape isn't an option anymore." "You're going to fight?" Rachel asked, sounding horrified. "Fight? No," Choi said, rubbing his chin. "I just need to level up." Rachel blinked. "How are you going to do that?" "Simple," Choi said shamelessly. "I just swoop in and steal the last hit. It's all about the EXP. Rachel sighed, shaking her head. "You're so sloppy." "Sloppy or genius?" Choi replied, now brimming with newfound determination. Emboldened by his strategy, Choi approached Kulkan. "I'd like to join the next hunt as part of the brave demon army." Kulkan squinted at him, making Choi sweat. "Did I cross a line? Please tell me I didn't cross a line." But Kulkan grinned, which was somehow worse. "I like your guts, human. You'll lead the next hunt." Choi froze. "Oh, no, that's not what I meant." But Kulkan slapped him on the back with enough force to dislocate a spine. "Relax. Being the leader is an honor." "Honor?" Choi muttered under his breath. "More like an express ticket to an early grave." Before he could argue further, an alarm sounded. "It's an urine herd," a trembling cook yelled. "What's an urine?" Choi asked. Kulkan snorted. "Not dangerous, but their meat is terrible. Let's hunt them anyway." "Urine stew it is." As the hunt began, Choi stuck close to the action, his eyes locked on any weakened urine. Rachel handed him a buff, an item that temporarily boosted his stats. "You don't have to thank me," Rachel said smugly. "Thank you," Choi said, bonking her on the head. "Why didn't you give me this earlier?" Buffed and motivated by the thought of surviving this nightmare, Choi leapt into action. He charged at an Uran, fists raised. "For my dreams, for retirement, for not dying as a virgin loser." He landed a punch that sent the urine crashing to the ground. The system window appeared, congratulating him with 4 levels, gained in a single hit. 4 levels from 1 kill, Choi said, cackling like a maniac. "I'll hit level 20 by lunchtime." As he stole more last hits, he elbowed a cook who got too close. "Oops, my elbow slipped," he said, not bothering to hide his evil grin. "Every last hit is mine." Hours later, the urine hunt ended, and the cooks began butchering the meat. Choi, expecting some form of post-battle reflection, found the cooks already feasting instead. One waved a cleaver. "Hey, give me the bigger portion." Choi was dumbfounded. "Wait, are you just eating the army's food?" Kulkan, overhearing, shrugged. "Cook's privilege. Monster meat doesn't keep well." Choi stared at the bland, chewy slabs of meat. "You risk your lives for this. If this were sold in South Korea, it wouldn't even last a day." And then inspiration struck. "What if," Choi mused, "I make a dish so good that these demons worship me as their god?" Ignoring Rachel's protests, he opened the hero shop and spent all his points. He bought a cooking skill, rank F, and an item loaded with MSG, the holy grail of flavor. Rachel face-palmed. "You wasted all your points on salt?" "Salt," Choi said dramatically. "This isn't just salt, it's destiny. Watch and learn." Sprinkling the seasoning onto the bland meat, Choi presented his masterpiece to Kulkan. Kulkan hesitated but took a bite. His eyes widened as memories of his childhood flooded back. His mother's voice, the comfort of a warm meal, and a simpler time. Tears streamed down his face. "Mother," he whispered. With Kulkan emotionally shattered by the power of MSG, Choi took home a bag of meat as thanks. As the chef handed it over, he reminded Choi, "It'll stay fresh for 2 days. Come back if you need more." Choi grinned, clutching the meat like a trophy. "This is just the beginning. Soon I'll control the entire demon army through their stomachs." At Bobo's house, the scene unfolded with all the grace of a circus act gone wrong. Choi Hyunseok barely had the door halfway open when Bobo, the oversized canine CS, charged at him like a freight train with fur. Hyunseok's eyes bulged, half from terror and half from sheer disbelief. "Meat! Meat! Take it!" he blurted, hurling the bag of monster meat like it was a live grenade. Bobo skidded to a halt, sniffed the bag, and transformed instantly from a bloodthirsty beast to a delighted puppy. The absurdity wasn't lost on Rachel, who quipped, "Congratulations, you're a dog whisperer now." Hyunseok ignored her sarcasm, pulling out every last morsel from the bag. Bobo devoured it with gusto, tail wagging like he'd won the lottery. "Enjoy, buddy. There's more where that came from," Hyunseok said, all the while calculating how this simple act of feeding a glorified mutt had boosted Bobo's affinity. The system dinged. Hero quest complete, plus 200 hero points. Perfect. Everything was going according to plan. Rachel, ever the nosy sidekick, peeked at Hyunseok's screen and immediately zeroed in on something. "You've got bonus points left. Why haven't you used them?" she demanded. Hyunseok waved her off, muttering something about not wanting to risk it because of some idiot who skipped the tutorial. Rachel rolled her eyes. "You do know we can still do the tutorial, right? Cue Rachel's lecture on stats. Strength makes you hit hard. Stamina means you won't collapse like a wet noodle. Agility keeps you from getting hit in the face, and well, that's for magic." Hyunseok nodded along, pretending to care, until Rachel got to charisma. "It's a hidden stat," she said, "only trainable through special means." Hyunseok's face lit up. Special means? So, like lifting a sword while posing heroically. Rachel, unamused, moved on to explaining why leveling only strength was a dumb idea. Hyunseok, however, was unconvinced. "Why not just hit harder?" he retorted. Rachel almost combusted on the spot. After some grudging adjustments, Hyunseok allocated his points. Rachel insisted he buy mana control fundamentals, only for them to discover the shop didn't have it. "Useless," Hyunseok grumbled, shooting her a pointed glare. Rachel bristled. "It's supposed to be there, not my fault." Level 100, finally. It had taken Hyunseok longer than expected, thanks to the absurdly increasing EXP caps. Rachel tried to console him, pointing out that most heroes take 6 months to get this far. Hyunseok wasn't having it. "You think that's comforting? Do you know how many times I almost died?" Their bickering was interrupted by a goblin summoning Hyunseok to Commander Hemis's office. Hemis, with her usual unsettling mix of elegance and menace, greeted him. "You've improved," she said, her tone sweet but eyes sharp. "Your mana has doubled." Hyunseok, caught off guard, blurted, "It's the meat. I mean, delivering meat daily to Bobo. Purely professional." Hemis smiled knowingly. "And the leveling system? That's why you're advancing so fast, isn't it?" Hyunseok froze. She knew. Apparently, Hemis had known from the start. "I've met your kind before," she said cryptically. Then, with the subtlety of a sledgehammer, she reminded him of their earlier promise, to fight a hopeless battle for her amusement. "Work harder. she said, her smile now a predator's grin. "It's more fun when you struggle." Hyunsok mentally screamed. Hemis didn't want a fight, she wanted a tragic comedy, and he was the unwilling clown. Rachel's panicked shrieks brought him back to reality. "What's the plan?" she demanded. "The plan," he echoed. "Learn, observe, prepare." "How?" Rachel pressed. "By buying a combat power meter," he declared. At 50 hero points, it was pricey but essential. They tested it immediately. Rachel clocked in at 375. "Is that high?" she asked, uncertain. Then Hyunsok handed the meter to her and her jaw hit the floor. 1,560. That's impossible. "Maybe you're the weak one," Hyunsok quipped. Rachel sulked, lamenting how far she'd fallen. Testing Bobo's power was the final blow. The mutt's combat strength, a jaw-dropping 47,412. "Great," Rachel mumbled. "We're weaker than a dog." Testing the other soldiers, Hyunsok noticed a pattern. Goblins were the weakest, while anyone above 10,000 strength was commander level. That's when he encountered Captain Bulkman, whose strength was 14,300. Then came his target, platoon leader Kirkin, a supposed idiot with the brain power of a pig. And 6,671 strength. Rachel stared at the meter in horror. This is suicide. The system seemed to agree, popping up a quest with a win probability near zero. Hyun-Rock laughed bitterly. "Even the system thinks I'm doomed. Perfect." But the reward was tempting. 300 hero points if he raised his combat strength to 3,000 in 1 week. "Do or die," he muttered, steeling himself. "Guess I'll have to survive for the audience's entertainment." Rachel sighed, muttering, "Sometimes I can't tell if you're brave or just an idiot." "Probably both," he replied, grinning. The next morning, Choi Hyunsok strutted into the kitchen, trying to project confidence despite the fact that he was still technically a human punchline in this orcish sitcom. Hunek announced his arrival with the enthusiasm of someone delivering junk mail, while Kulkane waved him in without looking up, too busy doing something incredibly important like sharpening knives or glaring at nothing. Then Kulkin noticed the goggles. "What's that supposed to be?" he asked, pointing at the cheap, slightly crooked contraption on Hyun-Seok's face. "Looks interesting." Hyun-Seok, never one to pass up an opportunity to downplay his suffering, shrugged. "Saw someone wearing it, thought I'd get one. Trendy, right?" "Trendy," Kulkan raised an eyebrow. "Among your kind, I assume. Humans are such strange creatures." Hyun-Seok gave an awkward laugh that said, "Please stop talking." Before the conversation could descend further into anthropological observations, Kulkan ordered him to prepare for the hunt. As Hyun-Seok begrudgingly obeyed, he used the goggles to scope out Kulkan's combat stats. 35,230 strength. Hyun-Seok blinked, then blinked again because surely that was a typo, right? Nope, it was real. This guy's strength isn't just high, it's a midlife crisis on steroids, Hyun-Seok muttered. And the fun didn't stop there. The other cooks, yes, cooks, had similarly terrifying stats. Apparently, kitchen staff in this place also meant demonic beast murderers on their day off. If he wanted to stand a chance in the upcoming battles, Hyun-Seok needed practice, like yesterday. "Kulkan," he began, doing his best to sound earnest. "I was thinking maybe I could spar with one of the cooks, just to learn a thing or two." Kulkan shot him a bemused look, as if to say, "You? Spar? Are you trying to audition for your own funeral?" Out loud, he said, "You're already strong enough for a human. No need to rush into something you can't handle." Hyun-Seok, ever the diplomat, responded with a subtle threat. "If you don't let me spar, I might just eat all the meat myself." A hush fell over the room. Even the goblins stopped sharpening their rusty weapons. Kulkin's smile twitched. Fine. Pick your opponent. Enter Golbachim, an orc so burly he looked like he could bench press a mountain for warm-ups. Combat strength, 2,620. The goblins, ever the pessimists, whispered among themselves about Hyunseok's odds of survival, which hovered somewhere between non-existent and he's already dead. Kulkan, ever the responsible boss, reminded Golbachim, don't kill him, do the bare minimum. Golbachim nodded, but the expression on his face screamed, define bare minimum. The spar began, and Hyunseok charged like a man with nothing to lose, which, let's face it, he didn't. Golbachim's massive fist swung toward him, but Hyunseok dodged just in time, adrenaline drowning out the part of his brain that usually screamed, bad idea. He noticed something. Golbachim fought on pure instinct like an animal. Predictable. With a sharp kick, Hyunseok connected. Golbachim staggered. Then, to everyone's disbelief, the massive orc collapsed. Silence. Wait, did he just win? A goblin asked, eyes wide. It happened so fast, I think I blinked, said another. Hyunseok stared down at Golbachim, his mind racing. He had won, against someone with more than double his strength. Combat strength, he muttered to himself, is just a number. It's not absolute. I can do this. Later on the hunt, Hyunseok's optimism faced its first major test. A group of Talas appeared, spider-like monsters wearing skulls like macabre fashion accessories. Kulkane groaned, annoyed. Do they taste bad? Hyunseok asked, hoping for a reprieve. Not at all, Kulkan replied, his eyes gleaming. Their meat is delicious, and their bone marrow is a delicacy. But they live in groups and have strong maternal instincts. If we harm the young, things get complicated. Hyunseok assumed this meant the hunt was over. Silly human, Kulkan ordered everyone to attack, declaring that Talas meat would be their snack for the day, because who doesn't love a little genocide before lunch? As chaos erupted, Hyunseok accidentally shoved goblins aside to land the killing blow on as many Talas as possible, raking in experience points like a professional kill stealer. Nice work, Rachel quipped. You're a pro at this. Why, thank you, Hyunseok replied smugly. It's why I love working in the kitchen. Choi Hyunseok wasn't sure what hell felt like, but the oppressive bone-crushing pressure around him sure felt like a decent introduction. Confused and not entirely sure why his body was screaming at him to flee, he turned just in time to hear someone's panicked screech. The Talas Queen has arrived! Oh, great. He followed their gaze, and sure enough, there she was. The Queen of Nightmares glaring at the pile of slaughtered Talas corpses like an avenging mother from the underworld. Her growl rattled the air and every shred of Hyunseok's false bravado. Curiosity, or maybe masochism, made him activate his goggles. Strength, immeasurable. A little pop-up might as well have said, "Congratulations, you're about to die." Hyunseok's brain froze as he processed the situation. They had butchered her children, mercilessly, to make snacks. He whipped his head around to the chef, hoping for a real battle plan. What he saw instead. The chef sprinting away like his apron was on fire, yelling, "Make it out alive and meet again." "Really?" Hyunseok muttered, eyes bulging. "That's your grand strategy. Run away, you rascal." A loud noise snapped him back to reality as someone barked in order. "Scatter!" Chaos erupted. Weak goblins were getting shredded left and right, their shrieks rising like a macabre symphony. One goblin frantically shouted for the head chef, clearly unaware the coward had already clocked out. Then came the queen's scream, a sound so loud it nearly popped Hyunseok's eardrums. He clamped his hands over his ears, wincing in agony. "Hyunseok!" Rachel's voice pierced through the noise. "Behind you!" He turned and saw them, hundreds of Talas, charging. Even the queen was in the mix. "Oh, come on," Hyunsok yelled, abandoning any pretense of courage as he bolted. Behind him, goblins begged for help, their screams cutting through the forest. Hyunsok didn't look back. He couldn't. Stopping, even for a second, would be suicide. Eventually, he stumbled into a cave. Gasping for air, he scanned the dark interior. "Is it safe?" he asked Rachel, trying to sound calm but failing miserably. "It's empty," she replied. "I checked earlier." Despite not trusting her even a little, he decided a cave with potential spiders was better than open-air spider Armageddon. He ventured deeper, noting how unnaturally large the cave was. "Big enough for the queen to fit in," Rachel observed helpfully. "Yeah, great," he muttered. "Just the comforting thought I needed." As he moved further, a gooey substance caught his eye. "What's this?" he asked, poking it with the enthusiasm of someone who knew this was a terrible idea. Rachel dismissed it at first, insisting the chef said there were no talus nests nearby. But then Hyunsok spotted the eggs. Lots of them. "Oh no," he whispered. "This isn't just a cave. It's a nest." Before he could fully process how badly he'd screwed up, green eyes gleamed in the darkness. A fully grown talus emerged, its chittering making his skin crawl. Hyunsok did the only thing he was good at. He ran. Again. "Are we going the right way?" Rachel asked as the talus chased them. "How should I know? I've never been here before," Hyunsok snapped, dodging stalagmites like a caffeinated parkour enthusiast. In his panic, he stepped on something slippery and fell, his limbs flailing like a malfunctioning puppet. Desperately, he grabbed the first thing he could and hurled it at the talus. The object hit the creature square in the chest. To his shock, it stopped attacking. Instead, it caught the object and stared at it. "Rachel," Hyunsok panted, "why did it stop?" She examined the situation, then said, "It's holding one of its eggs. Maybe it's protective of them." An idea sparked in Hyunsok's brain, equal parts genius and idiotic. Grabbing other egg, he faced the talus. "You think you can intimidate me?" he shouted, despite being very much intimidated. "Take this!" He hurled the egg. The talus panicked, scrambling to catch it. Rachel noted its impressive agility, but Hyunsok was too busy realizing his plan might actually work. "There's over 100 eggs here," he announced, his voice dripping with confidence. "Let's see how good your reflexes really are." He began pelting the talus with egg after egg, taunting it between throws. "You call that catching? Even toddlers are better at this." Rachel rolled her eyes but helped pass him more eggs. The talus grew more frantic, each throw driving it closer to a full-on meltdown. For a moment, Hyunsok felt invincible. Then Rachel spoke. "That was the last one." Hyunsok froze, his confidence shattering like one of the eggs he'd been lobbing. The talus queen let out a thunderous growl, a sound that reverberated through the cave and rattled Choi Hyunsok's very soul. It wasn't just anger, it was pure, unfiltered wrath, aimed squarely at the idiot who'd turned her eggs into dodgeballs. With an earth-shaking roar, she charged. "Rachel, buff me, quickly!" Hyunsok yelled, his voice cracking under the weight of impending doom. Rachel mumbled something about how reckless this was, but she cast the buff anyway. Meanwhile, Hyunsok, ever the optimist, convinced himself that the queen was running on fumes after her egg-catching marathon. He took a deep breath. Focus. You can do this. As the queen barreled toward him, Hyunsok didn't run. Oh no, our boy decided he was a hero. He stood his ground, gathering every ounce of courage or stupidity, and prepared his ultimate move. "Paradise reincarnation shot!" he screamed, charging forward to meet the monstrosity head-on. In a collision of chaos, his attack landed. The talus queen screeched, flailed, and finally collapsed in a heap of legs and goo. Silence. Then the system windows popped up one after another, congratulating him on leveling up. Rachel approached cautiously. "Are you okay?" Hyunseok, lying on the ground and feeling like he'd just been hit by a freight train, groaned. "Do I look okay? I feel like I'm dying." He invited Rachel to move somewhere less corpse-filled and, to his surprise, she used healing magic on him. As the faint warmth of recovery magic spread through his battered body, he muttered, "Investing in mana points. Totally worth it." Rachel shrugged. "It's not that amazing. Just stops blood loss mostly." Hyunseok added his newly acquired points to his stats, pleased with his now balanced build. Strength, 56 plus 2. Agility, 53 plus 2. Stamina, 55 plus 2. Mana, 53 plus 2. Charisma, 27. Not bad, he thought, even if he had no clue how to use mana yet. It's an investment. Just as he was basking in his hard-earned glory, a familiar voice echoed through the cave. "Hyunseok?" It was Kulkan, looking remarkably alive. The head chef grinned. "You made it out, huh?" Hyunseok blinked, stunned. "What are you doing here?" "I saw this cave while running for my life," Kulkan explained cheerfully. "Lucky, right?" His expression shifted to horror when he spotted the carnage and, more importantly, the eggs. "Wait, are those Talas eggs?" Hyunseok nodded warily. Kulkan's eyes sparkled like a kid in a candy store. These are a delicacy. Only high-ranking officials ever get to taste them." "Get a grip," Hyunseok snapped. "We need to get out of here, not plan a 5-star meal." Kulkan's grin faltered. "You think the queen's already inside?" he asked nervously. "Oh, you mean the one I just killed?" "Yeah, she's not a problem anymore," Hyunseok said with a mix of pride and exhaustion. But Kulkan wasn't reassured. "Do you know how strong you have to be to take down a Talas queen?" "Commander level, minimum. I'm just saying, if this is my last meal." Before Hyunseok could scream in frustration, the sound of footsteps reached their ears. A group of goblins stumbled into the cave, battered but alive. "Looks like you all barely made it," Kulkan said, his tone oddly chipper for someone who'd been ready to accept death 5 minutes ago. "Lucky you. You might get to taste the eggs." Hyunseok glared at the goblins, contemplating the absurdity of dying in a cave over a gourmet snack. "No way," he thought. "I am not dying here. I still haven't eaten my wife's 5-side dish meal. I refuse to die in vain." Meanwhile, at Hemis's office, Commander Reedrun stood stiffly as Reedrun delivered his report with military precision. "Mission accomplished. The next saintess of the Holy Empire has been captured." "Impressive," she said, her cold demeanor softening as she patted him on the head like a proud mom. Reedrun blushed furiously, muttering something about formalities. A knock at the door interrupted their moment. Hemis scowled. "You're interrupting something important." A goblin entered, looking terrified. "Ma'am, urgent report. The cooks who went out to gather ingredients. There's been an incident." Hemis sighed. "There's always an incident with them. What is it this time?" The Talas Queen appeared. Most of the cooks, including head chef Kulkan, are dead or missing. Hemis's expression didn't change. And Choi Hyunseok, he's missing too. At that, Reedrun stiffened. The idea of Hyunseok missing did not sit well with him. The goblins, in their infinite wisdom, raised their makeshift cups of spider egg juice for a toast. They were already celebrating their own impending deaths with the enthusiasm of a group completely devoid of self-preservation instincts. Kulkan, always one to lean into the absurdity, bid them a melodramatic farewell, complete with a wistful expression that screamed Oscar-worthy. Choi Hyunseok, however, wasn't having it. With a well-aimed smack to Kulkan's head, he snapped, "Get a hold of yourself!" Kulkan's wide-eyed, "What the hell, man?" face was met with Hyunseok's deadpan reply. "You looked like you'd fallen under a wicked spell, so I woke you up with my secret weapon." "Secret weapon?" Kulkan asked, rubbing his head. Hyunsok smugly whipped out a shiny new item. The Beast Encyclopedia, Demonic Beast Edition. This baby cost me 50 hero points, and it's basically a cheat code for survival. He flipped to the entry for Talas. Spider demons with tough legs, weak torsos and heads, and bonus feature. Their bodily fluids are highly flammable. Oh, and their eggs, literal bombs, the saliva holding this cave together, fire's worst nightmare. Kulkan's face paled. So, no fire magic then? Actually, Hyunsok, RTA said with a grin, you're gonna light this place up. Kulkan sighed dramatically. I can only shoot tiny flames. It's not like I'm a walking flamethrower. Hyunsok waved him off. Doesn't matter, we're not burning through the Talas. We're burning through their hopes and dreams. Gathering the goblins, Hyunsok delivered a stirring, if slightly unhinged pep talk. Listen up, you spineless cowards. If you want to survive and eat more delicious things like Talas eggs, you'll shut up and do what I say. The goblins muttered their doubts, but Hyunsok dangled the ultimate bait. Unlimited gourmet demonic beast meat. Kulkan's eyes sparkled like a toddler in a candy store. Okay, what's the plan? Hyunsok explained, all smug and self-satisfied. Simple. We run like hell, throw eggs to distract them, and blow this cave to kingdom come. Easy, right? As they charged out of the cave, they were greeted by a swarm of Talas. Kulkan, fire now, Hyunsok barked. Kulkan hesitated. But the saliva walls. Do it. With a sigh, Kulkan shot a small flame, and the resulting explosion rocked the cave. Flames spread. Talas screamed, and the goblins clung to the walls like traumatized geckos. What did you do? Rachel shouted. Hyunsok grinned, a man thoroughly enjoying his descent into madness. Left some eggs deeper in the cave to keep the Talas busy. Now run! The goblins hurled eggs with wild abandon, distracting the Talas as Hyunsok clutched the last one like a grenade. They bolted through the chaos, dodging falling debris and furious spiders. Light appeared at the end of the tunnel. Salvation, freedom, hope. But, of course, life isn't that kind. Standing between them and the exit was the Queen Talas, her many eyes gleaming with murderous intent. Kulkan froze. Oh great, she's back. We're dead. No, we're not, Hyunsok growled. The queen wasn't attacking, though. She was fixated on the last egg in Hyunsok's hands. Realization dawned. She won't move because of this. Raising the egg high, Hyunsok lit a piece of cloth tied around it, the flames licking dangerously close to his hand. All right, Your Majesty, this is your last egg. If it goes up, so does your entire lineage. The queen hesitated, her legs twitching. Hyunsok, not one to miss a chance for theatrics, added, I'm asking nicely, move. The queen screeched and shifted slightly, creating a narrow path to the exit. Hyunsok, in a fit of either genius or insanity, hurled the burning egg at the wall. Flames erupted, debris rained down, and the cave began to collapse. Run, he screamed. As Hyunsok sprinted for his life, system windows began popping up. Ding, level up, ding, level up again. More and more notifications flooded his vision as the Queen Talas was crushed by falling rocks. He smirked. Huh? Hyunsok stood in the rubble of what used to be a cave, sweat pouring down his face as realization struck him like a lightning bolt. No way. His voice trembled, not with fear but with the sheer absurdity of it all. Did all the Talas die in the collapse? And I got all their exp? Scratching the back of his head, he muttered, Is it because I'm the one who collapsed the cave? He paused for a moment, contemplating the karmic irony of leveling up from mass cave-assisted homicide. Then reality hit him harder than Rachel's verbal abuse. Oh, crap. Gotta move. Anyway, let's get out of here. Rachel, give me a buff. Rachel rolled her eyes so hard it was a miracle they didn't roll right out of her head. Desk, finally got your brain working, huh? Fine, buff coming up. As they ran, Hyunsok's mind spun. I made it out of the last mess, but escaping with the queen still here? This'll be tricky. He glanced back. The queen Talus was still there, looming ominously, blocking their path like a bouncer at a high-end club they were definitely underdressed for. We need a distraction, he muttered. And just like that, divine comedy descended. Culcain, eyes shining with either inspiration or desperation, ran forward holding an egg high above his head. For the great queen, he bellowed, tears streaming down his cheeks. I offer you this egg in exchange for our safe passage. Hyunsok blinked. Is this guy serious? It didn't matter. The queen, unamused by Culcain's melodramatic performance, lunged. A single swift strike, and Culcain was down. Egg smashed, tears wasted. Well, Hyunsok huffed, his voice dripping with sarcasm, that was mildly helpful. Thanks, Culcain. Guess you're the scrambled part of this plan. The queen's 8 eyes gleamed with renewed focus, her attention now locked on Hyunsok. She shot a web from her mouth, the sticky string wrapping tightly around his arm. What the? Hyunsok froze, struggling against the impossible grip. Panic set in. Spiderwebs, seriously? Is this how it ends? His thoughts raced. Dying here attached to a queen Talus like some cursed cosplay accessory? Not happening. Just as the queen prepared her finishing move, something, or rather someone, grabbed her leg. Hyunsok turned to see the impossible. Run, he stammered, barely believing his eyes. There stood Run, red eyes glowing like a demonic traffic light. He gave Hyunsok a faint smile. I knew you'd still be alive. You're too stubborn to die. Hyunsok could only gawk as Run, without hesitation, tightened his grip on the queen's leg. Don't worry, Run said calmly, his voice as smooth as butter. I'll take it from here. The queen shrieked and lunged, her massive body bearing down on Run. But he didn't flinch. Instead, with a terrifying display of raw power, he tore her torso in half like it was wet tissue paper. The queen fell silent. Hyunsok stood there, dumbfounded, staring at the carnage. He broke into a wide grin and exclaimed, "That was freaking awesome!" In the dimly lit room of the Black Castle, Bobo wagged his stubby tail and clapped his oversized hands, brimming with excitement at Hyunsok's return. His sheer joy was a sharp contrast to the perpetual gloom of their surroundings. Hyunsok sauntered in, arms wide open. Now there's my big baby boy. I've come back from the dead to see you. His tone was dripping with sarcasm, but Bobo didn't care. His hero was home. Rachel, leaning against the door frame, sighed deeply. We were fortunate to come back alive, thanks to that cowhead. Hyunsok shrugged with mock nonchalance. Might as well enjoy the time we've got. Who knows, we might actually die for real soon. Rachel's face turned pale. Soon? Why would you say that? What's happening? Hyunsok chuckled darkly, the kind of laugh you'd expect from someone on the brink of a mental breakdown. The finals aren't that far away. Rachel's shock turned to reluctant optimism. But you've grown a lot, haven't you? Surely you've closed the gap a little. With a dramatic flair, Hyunsok pulled up his status window, his finger hovering over the gleaming level 200. True, he admitted. Thanks to that cave collapse, I skyrocketed 75 levels in one go. His voice carried equal parts pride and disbelief. It's exactly 200 now. Rachel's brow furrowed, her concern as clear as the sweat forming on Hyunsok's forehead. It still feels like it's not enough. Hyunsok gave her a knowing nod. You think so too, huh? The opponent has over 6,000 battle power, and I'm sitting here at around 3,500. Feels like I'm bringing a stick to a sword fight. Rachel, ever the impromptu teacher, decided it was time for a pop quiz. Here's one for you. Will you attain orc-like strength if you hit 6,000 battle power? Hyunseok stroked his chin thoughtfully, pretending to be a sage. It's not just about battle power, right? Rachel clapped her hands once. Correct. That kind of power isn't just about brute force. It's about using magic too. If you want to face that monster of an opponent, you'll have to start using magic. Hyunseok groaned and slumped into a chair. Easy for you to say. It's not like magic grows on trees. Rachel smirked. Don't tell me you've forgotten. You've used magic before. Hyunseok blinked, bewildered. Me? When did I ever do that? Rachel crossed her arms. In the Talus hatchery, although I'll admit it was more of a fluke than actual magic. Hyunseok's mind began to churn. That sudden power surge. Was that magic? He murmured. His expression caught somewhere between revelation and confusion. Before the conversation could spiral into one of Hyunseok's existential crises, the door creaked open. Standing tall in the doorway with his glowing red eyes and that perpetually cool demeanor was none other than Run. Hyunseok, he said, his voice steady but firm. Are you in here? Hyunseok nearly leaped out of his chair, sweat pouring down his face. Run, what brings someone of your stature to such a lowly place like this? His nervous chuckle could have powered a small generator. Run's eyes softened for a brief moment before his tone turned serious. Follow me. The commander wants to meet you. The air in Hemis's office was as tense as ever, with an underlying eeriness that only she could make feel natural. What brings you here, Run? She asked, her voice smooth yet laced with suspicion. A meeting described as personal is unusual. It's not like you. Run, as composed as ever, took a step forward and declared, Commander, let me teach Choi Hyunseok the art of battle myself. Hyunseok, who had been standing awkwardly to the side, nearly choked on his own breath. What? Am I hearing this right? His brain screamed, the panic clear in his eyes. Hemis's grin stretched wider, dangerously so. Any particular reason why? Run nodded, his tone firm and resolute. Orc Kurkin is a platoon leader, but I've observed him closely. Lately, he seems fit to take on the role of deputy battalion commander. If things continue like this, Hyunseok will definitely lose. Hyunseok's jaw dropped. Wait, what kind of reverse motivational speech is this? Run wasn't done. Hyunseok has great potential. I want to personally see to his growth and ensure that he's ready for the challenges ahead. His voice grew even more passionate. I want to test the future commander's mettle myself. Hyunseok's eyes widened further. What the hell is this heartfelt confession? There's no way the commander will agree to this madness. Hemis, clearly entertained, stretched her arms upward with a yawn. Okay, I accept. Hyunseok froze, the gears in his brain grinding to a halt. Wait, what? That's it? Hey, no deliberation, no ominous warnings. Run gave a sharp bow. Thank you very much, Commander. His expression was calm, but there was a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. Hemis waved a dismissive hand. If you're done talking, move along. I have important work to do. She spun her chair around to face her desk, signaling the meeting was over. Finally, he forced a fake smile, his face drenched in sweat. He peeked back into the room from the doorway. I thank you greatly for your generosity, great commander. Truly, your magnanimity knows no bounds. We'll be going now. Inside the now quiet office, Hemis's grin remained as she stared at the closed door. Her fingers drummed against the desk as she mused aloud. Choi Hyunseok. He's grown twice as strong as the last time we met, she said, her voice tinged with fascination and irritation. It's fun to watch someone evolve so quickly, but... Her eyes narrowed, her grin twisting into something darker. It's starting to irritate me. Growing this fast, it's unnatural." She stood, her shadow stretching unnaturally across the room as if it had a life of its own. If Reedrun helps him, Kurkin might actually lose, and we can't have that, can we? Her jaw stretched open, wider and wider, like a grotesque man-eating flower. Her voice echoed ominously through the room as she declared, "I'll grant Kurkin something of my own to make things equal." The scene shifted to Reedrun's personal training ground, a place so massive it could host a small war. Hyunsok gawked at the sheer scale, his eyes darting from one corner to another. "He uses this place all by himself," he thought, incredulous. "Hemis must adore him. Ugh, favoritism much?" Reedrun, walking ahead, glanced back at Hyunsok. His glowing red eyes narrowed and he silently assessed his reluctant trainee. "There's already a massive amount of mana in Choi Hyunsok's body," he mused. "But he still can't use any of it. He got stronger way too fast, dangerous even." His thoughts grew darker as he clenched his fist. The basics aren't enough, and with only 4 days until the battle, there's no time for gradual progress. The only way is... Without warning, Reedrun threw a bone-shattering punch directly at Hyunsok, yelling, "Pain is part of growing." Hyunsok's eyes widened as he saw the fist of doom hurtling toward him. "What? Is he crazy?" he thought, his life flashing before his eyes. Before he could react, the punch connected squarely with his face, sending him flying like a rag doll across the training ground. Sprawled on the ground, Hyunsok groaned in pain. "Why is he beating me after promising to train me? What kind of training is this?" "Stay focused, Hyunsok," Reedrun barked, already lunging toward him again with a high-powered kick. "Wait!" Hyunsok screamed, barely managing to block the attack. The force of the kick sent him skidding back several meters, leaving a trail in the dirt. Reedrun paused, observing Hyunsok with a mixture of surprise and intrigue. Strange. His body isn't particularly strong, but his reaction time and vision are on par with a seasoned knight. And his spirit. He recalled their first encounter and the unexpected kick Hyunsok had landed. It's not a coincidence. His combat instincts are shockingly refined. I have to trust his senses here. Taking a stance like a charging bull, Reedrun's determination intensified. "You made a bet with the commander," he roared. "You can't beat Kurkin without mana." With that, he charged headfirst at Hyunsok like a living battering ram. Hyunsok barely had time to process what was happening before Reedrun's head slammed into him with the force of a freight train. He was sent flying again, coughing blood, midair. He landed in a heap, groaning. "He's not joking. I might actually die. I'm not even married yet. I never got to see my cute child." Reedrun didn't let up. He lunged again, yelling, "Choi Hyunsok! It's either die now or learn to block with mana." With no other options, Hyunsok gritted his teeth, clenched his fists, and thought, "God, please, if you're up there, help!" As Reedrun's attack closed in, something incredible happened. Hyunsok's fist began to glow with a brilliant blue energy. Instinct took over, and he swung with all his might. The ground beneath them cracked and shattered from the sheer power of his punch. Reedrun, with his usual composure, dodged the blow effortlessly, watching as the impact left a crater in the training ground. Hyunsok collapsed face first into the dirt, utterly exhausted and unconscious. Rachel, who had been watching in growing horror, ran to his side. Hero! Hero!" she shouted, shaking his lifeless body. Reedrun approached slowly, his expression unreadable. He glanced down at Hyunsok and said, "You controlled your mana. Did you notice?" Hyunsok, barely able to move, raised a trembling hand and forced a weak thumbs up. A faint, delirious smile spread across his face as he thought, "God answered my prayer." Reedrun reached out, his large calloused hand gripping Hyunsok's battered one firmly. "Good. "You'll win if you stay on track," he said with an approving nod, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic warmth. But then his grip tightened, a little too tightly. "Stay still. I'll heal you," he added, focusing intently. The moment Ridran's dark mana surged into Hyunseok, the so-called healing process began. Instead of relief, however, Hyunseok's body stiffened. His eyes bulged like a cartoon character caught in a slapstick gag. What is this?" Hyunseok croaked, his voice strangled. His battered face twisted into a grotesque grimace as pain shot through his body. Suddenly, his hands flew to his throat, and he began coughing violently. Blood spewed from his mouth like a horror movie gone wrong. "Oh my God, I'm dying!" he sputtered, his voice hoarse and panicked. Ridran's glowing red eyes widened in realization. Oh no!" he exclaimed, slapping a hand to his forehead. "I forgot. Dark mana is like poison for humans." Ridran immediately grabbed Hyunseok and cradled him in his arms, his face a mix of horror and guilt. "I'm sorry, Hyunseok, I'm sorry," he shouted, his usually calm demeanor crumbling. The narrator's voice cut through the scene like an overly enthusiastic tour guide of despair and irony. Behold the cosmic rock-paper-scissors of this world. Dark mana counters mana, mana counters divine power, and divine power counters dark mana. A tidy little trifecta, isn't it? Almost makes you forget the chaos it causes. But don't worry, dear audience. We're here to remind you. The narration continued, dripping with dark humor. Mana, the pride of humans, their found fancy magic juice. Dark mana, the spicy poison that demons love to guzzle. And divine power, the celestial Wi-Fi reserved for the God-fearing elite who are apparently the only ones who know the password. Yes, humans, demons, and worshippers of the Almighty, each playing their part in this eternal slap fight with a touch of flair. But let's talk about the crown jewel of this holy circus, the Church of Tusis. Oh yes, the biggest congregation of believers, wielding the divine power of a god so real and present that most mortals have to squint to notice. These folks weren't content with just handing out sermons and hymn books. No, they caused religious wars. Yes, wars plural. Because nothing says love thy neighbor quite like torching their village for having the wrong deity on speed dial. After bulldozing every other religion like a toddler on a sugar high with a stack of toy blocks, the Church of Tosis crowned itself the divine empire of Gotrin, a name as pompous as the empire itself. With their shiny new title and an empire-wide no other gods allowed policy, Gotrin didn't just enforce belief. They micromanaged it. How? By hand-picking people who could hear God's voice. Oh, what a talent scout they must have been. This chosen one naturally became the saintess, the ultimate religious influencer. Now, don't let the saintess title fool you into thinking she had any real power. Oh no, she was more like the ultimate PR campaign for Gotrin, a walking, talking billboard for divine approval, carefully selected and groomed to make sure the Empire's narrative stayed spotless. If there's one thing Gotrin loved more than divine power, it was controlling the spotlight. After all, why let the actual gods do the heavy lifting when you can run the show yourself? The scene shifted to a dimly lit, sparsely decorated room where a white-haired woman sat on her bed, staring blankly ahead like a forgotten protagonist in someone else's story. The chatter of nosy passers-by filtered through the cracks of her door. "I heard the next saintess is imprisoned in that room," one whispered with all the tact of a gossip columnist. "Really?" Another gasped, as if this were the plot twist of a trashy romance novel. Inside, the woman's face came into view. Abelson Marriott, the so-called next saintess of the Divine Empire. Captured by the demon army, she now seemed more like a weary employee who just quit her soul-sucking job. Her internal monologue carried the same deadpan vibe. Praying to God, For what? A miracle? Or maybe a resignation letter? Honestly, this is better than being stuck in that oppressive church. Her existential crisis was rudely interrupted by a door slamming open. In stomped Reedrun, looking like he'd just been hit by a truckload of guilt, cradling the battered and half-dead Hyunseok like he was carrying a priceless but broken vase. "Saintess, wake up!" Reedrun barked. Abelson Marriott jolted, her tone turning from tired resignation to pure annoyance. "Oh, how rude! What do you think you're doing barging in here?" Reedrun, ignoring her completely, shouted with the desperation of a man whose last two brain cells were fighting for dominance. "You need to heal this human." Hyunseok's consciousness floated somewhere between life, death, and overwhelming regret. "My head hurts. What the hell did that lunatic do to me this time? There's no way the last hand I get to hold is a man's hand. I should have at least held Rachel's hand. Or anyone's hand, really. Anyone except this guy's." His internal whining was interrupted as his eyes fluttered open, revealing Abelson Marriott standing over him like some ethereal vision. "Huh? Who is this? A silver-haired beauty? Wait, am I dead again? Did I end up in heaven this time?" He covered his face dramatically, mumbling through hiccuping breaths. "I will never forgive you, Angel. I'd rather become an archmage at the age of 30 than go through this again. Also, while you're at it, can you make sure Rachel rots in eternal hell? She's a demon with an angelic mask, I swear." Abelson Marriott froze, her lips parting in utter disbelief, but Hyunseok, apparently mistaking her silence for divine pity, continued his incoherent rambling. "And one more thing before I reincarnate. If you're going to make me a hero again, could you maybe marry me beforehand? It'd really take the sting out of all this dying." The room went silent, then Abelson's face twisted into a scowl. She balled her fists and bellowed, "Holy, you are pathetic!" Hyunseok blinked. "Huh?" he yelped, staring at her, mortified. Reedrun, seemingly oblivious to the chaos, grinned ear to ear. "Hyunseok, you're awake!" he exclaimed, scooping the hapless human into a bear hug so tight it threatened to send him back to his mindscape. "You're killing me again!" Hyunseok screamed, thrashing like a cat being shoved into a bathtub. He glanced at Abelson, a creeping realization dawning. "Wait, she's real? That was a real person? I said all that out loud?" Reedrun, still clinging to Hyunseok like a guilty Labrador, turned to the saintess. "Is he fully healed?" Abelson Marriott rolled her eyes, her annoyance palpable. "Not fully. The dark mana hasn't left his body. I can't purge it without potentially killing him. It'll fade over time, so just let him exist for now." Reedrun's guilt turned into determination. "Got it. I'll repay this by training him even harder." Hyunseok trembled, his voice weak and terrified. "You don't need to treat a lowly being like me this way. Really, I insist." But Reedrun ignored him, hoisting him up like a sack of regret. "Let's go." Wait, Hyunseok stammered, flailing uselessly as Reedrun dragged him out. Abelson watched them leave, her expression a mix of confusion and mild pity. Her thoughts echoed like a foreboding drumbeat. A human being trained by a demon. Who is he? And more importantly, how is he still alive? The scene shifted to Bobo's cozy but slightly menacing lair. He grabbed Hyunseok in his massive paws, shaking him like a worn-out chew toy. Hyunseok, looking more like a battered protagonist from a tragic drama than a triumphant hero, groaned in exhaustion. "Thanks, Bobo. I heard you destroyed your home and, ate a soldier who came to feed you. That's really something. Thank you very much for your dedication. If it weren't for your separation anxiety, I'd probably still be getting my soul pounded out of me in training." He paused, his voice cracking as tears welled up in his eyes. "So many things happened to me today." And just like that, the dam broke. Hyunsok slumped to the floor, bawling like a toddler whose ice cream just fell on the pavement. So many things, and there's still dark mana inside me. Hyunsok shakily stood up and turned to Rachel, his expression a mix of desperation and paranoia. Isn't this a huge problem? Rachel, am I going to die? Please tell me I'm not going to die. He called her name again, his voice rising with panic. Rachel? But Rachel, standing off to the side, looked like she'd just been told her favorite idol group was disbanding. Tears streamed down her face as she muttered through sobs. Ruined. Corrupted. My hero is not the same anymore. Hyunsok's face twisted like he'd just been served the world's spiciest regret sandwich. He should have been the one crying after all the disasters he'd endured, near-death experiences, dark mana poisoning, and a demon training regimen that could break an actual demon. Life wasn't exactly treating him like a VIP. But no, Rachel was the one bawling her eyes out. After what felt like an eternity of tearful drama, Rachel calmed down. Through sniffles, she admitted that all of Hyunsok's suffering was her fault. The dark mana in his body, the almost dying, and, oh yeah, her very existence. Sarcastically, she added, It's because I'm a demon wearing an angel's face. A crazy maniac who deserves eternal hell. Cue Hyunsok's brain screeching to a halt. Those were his exact words to the saintess when he woke up. Words he thought would never come back to haunt him. Knowing he'd just stepped on the world's largest emotional landmine, he scrambled to console Rachel. You're not a maniac. If anything, you're the best buff item in this world. Rachel glared at him like he'd just proposed marriage to a cockroach. Shut up. I know you don't mean any of that. All Hyunsok could do was awkwardly sit there, wondering if this was his punishment for every bad thing he'd ever done. 3 days later, Hyunsok lay face down in the dirt, crying like a baby. His training with Reedrun had turned him into a living pile of misery. Every muscle in his body screamed betrayal, and the only thing keeping him from becoming a permanent floor decoration was Abelson Marriott. Abelson, ever the reluctant saintess, healed him while trying not to openly gag at his existence. You're as beautiful as ever, Hyunsok muttered weakly, his face still buried in the ground. She stared at him, thoroughly unimpressed. You're disgusting. But she healed him anyway, which, in Hyunsok's book, made her a saintess after all. As she finished, Hyunsok scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Have a favor to ask. Abelson raised an eyebrow. What now? He hesitated before blurting out, Could you pray for me not to die tomorrow? And, maybe, come watch me fight? For a split second, Abelson's cold demeanor cracked. She blinked, caught completely off guard. The day had finally come. The battle that would determine Choi Hyunsok's fate. The arena buzzed with murmurs as demons of all shapes and sizes speculated why anyone, let alone a human, would challenge the commander's champion. Was it bravery, stupidity, a death wish? The consensus leaned heavily toward option 3. In the VIP section, Hemis was practically glowing with excitement. Reedrun, she purred, her sharp grin widening. Who do you think will win? Reedrun, ever the stoic, replied with unshakable confidence. Choi Hyunsok will win. His talent is extraordinary and he's worked hard for this. Hemis leaned closer, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. How about we make things interesting then? Let's bet. If Hyunsok wins, you can keep training him. Reedrun raised an eyebrow. And if he loses? Her smile turned wicked. Then you will kill him with your own hands. After all, you vouched for him. Responsibility, Reedrun felt a chill crawl up his spine. The uneasy knot in his stomach screamed at him to decline, but pride and circumstance left him with no choice. He gave a reluctant nod. Wonderful, Hemis exclaimed, clapping her hands. It's been a while since I felt this excited. As the announcer began introducing the fighters, the tension in the arena reached a fever pitch. Hyunseok stood in the ring, trying not to look fazed. "I'm in my best condition," he told himself. "I leveled up, I've got a new skill, and I've been trained in Reedrun's combat style." His confidence grew as he flexed his fists, silently praying his 8% proficiency in the style would be enough. Of course, his focus wavered when Rachel yelled at him from the sidelines. "Hey, what are you daydreaming about?" Hyunseok blushed furiously. "A date with the silver-haired saintess," he admitted internally, though he'd rather die than say it aloud. The announcer's voice boomed. "And now, the challenger's doom, the beast of destruction, the commander's trusted lieutenant, Kurkin." The hulking monstrosity entered the ring, his massive form casting a shadow that seemed to swallow Hyunseok whole. His roar echoed through the arena, sending shock waves that rattled bones and nerves alike. Hyunseok quickly activated his goggles to scan his opponent. His stomach dropped. "Combat level 10,573? Are you kidding me?" Rachel gawked. "That's impossible. He's gotten stronger in just a few days. Something's off." Even Reedrun, normally unflappable, was visibly alarmed. Hamis smirked at his reaction, her voice a dagger in his ear. "No backing out now, Reedrun. A bet's a bet," Kurkin snarled, his energy radiating malice and power, as if daring Hyunseok to step forward. Hyunseok clenched his fists, sweat dripping down his face. Of course, nothing is ever easy, he thought bitterly. But deep down, a spark of determination ignited. The fight started with Hyunseok charging at Kurkin like a madman with something to prove, and probably a death wish. Kurkin, the towering beast with a club that could flatten a house, had seen this coming and swung his weapon. Hyunseok barely ducked in time, muttering, "If that thing touches me, I'm toast, like literal toast." Kurkin's swing missed, and Hyunseok seized the moment, landing a solid punch on the monster's ribs. The crowd winced. The announcer chimed in, "Ooh, that's gotta hurt." Except it didn't. Kurkin didn't even flinch. He stood there staring at Hyunseok like a dad unimpressed by his kid's science project. Hyunseok tried again, winding up and delivering another punch. This one had even more force, enough to break a lesser opponent, Kurkin. Still unimpressed? "Oh no, I've messed up," Hyunseok thought, just as a blur came whizzing toward him. That blur? Kurkin's massive club. It smashed into Hyunseok's side, sending him flying across the arena. He scrambled to his feet, clutching his left arm, now bent in ways arms shouldn't bend. Great. Broken arm. First round. Amazing start, he thought bitterly. Kurkin, meanwhile, looked as fresh as ever, like he'd just clocked in for work. Why is this guy still moving like he's not a walking donut after my punches? Hyunseok mumbled, recalling Reedrun's words. Combat isn't about strength alone. It's about the intent to kill. Without that, your punches are just love taps. Back in training, Reedrun had been painfully clear. You can't beat Kurkin unless you have the intent to kill. He's not your sparring partner, he's your executioner. Hyunseok hadn't fully understood then. Now, staring at Kurkin's death glare, he got the memo loud and clear. Kurkin charged again, his weapon gleaming with murderous intent. But this time, instead of dodging, Hyunseok ran straight at him. If I'm dying here, I'm going out swinging, he thought, screaming, "Die!" as he threw a punch laced with pure killing intent. The impact was catastrophic. Dust filled the arena as Hyunseok unleashed Reedrun's style. First form, instant obliteration. When the dust settled, Kurkin had a gaping hole in his chest, large enough to see daylight through. The announcer, stunned, raised Hyunseok's trembling fist. The winner, Choi Hyunseok. The crowd erupted. Abelson Marriott blinked in disbelief. Rachel screamed like a fangirl at a concert. Hyunseok? He stood there shaking, thinking, Reedrun's style is amazing. And also going to kill me. I'm never doing this twice. But before he could enjoy his victory, a dark red aura engulfed Kurkin's supposedly dead body. The announcer gasped, "Could it be Kurkin is standing? It's a miracle." Hyunseok, drenched in sweat, muttered, "No, this ain't no miracle. This is some straight-up nonsense." Kurkin rose to his feet, his monstrous form now crackling with demonic energy. Hyunseok stared in disbelief. Of course. Why wouldn't the unkillable monster get back up? I mean, what's next? He grows 2 heads. Hyunseok stood frozen, his wide eyes locked on Kurkin, who should have been nothing more than a monstrous corpse. But no, the beast was up, radiating dark red energy like a walking bad decision. Of course, Hyunseok muttered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Why just kill me once when you can kill me twice? Commander must have done something. That makes sense. Perfect sense. This day just keeps getting better. Up in the stands, Hemis grinned like a cat toying with its prey. Her lips curled in a devilish smirk as Reedrun side-eyed her, suspicion written all over his face. She shared her dark mana with Kurkin, he realized, his gut twisting. And she cursed him with undying. Of course she did. Why wouldn't she? Hemis's cold voice cut through the tension like a knife. He mastered combat arts in such a short time. His talent is truly extraordinary, she mused, her tone detached like she was watching a science experiment unfold. But I expected as much. Hyunseok, drenched in sweat and disbelief, pointed at the still-standing Kurkin and asked the most obvious question in the world. Is he still alive? Rachel's panic levels skyrocketed, and she screamed, "No, he's moving because of the curse. It shouldn't last much longer." "Oh, great," Hyunseok grumbled. "So he's a zombie now? Wonderful. Can't wait for him to start eating my brains." But before he could fully process this nightmare, Kurkin roared and charged. Same attack, Hyunseok thought as he read it himself. This is too easy. I've seen this before. But as he stepped forward, a sharp pain shot through his leg. His body betrayed him, freezing in place like a malfunctioning robot. Kurkin took full advantage, grabbing Hyunseok by the neck like he was picking up a particularly annoying fly. Then, with the force of a meteor, he slammed Hyunseok into the ground. The impact knocked the wind out of him, but as Kurkin's massive fist came hurtling down, Hyunseok's instincts kicked in. He twisted, locked the beast's arm in a hold, and screamed through gritted teeth, "Just die!" With a sickening snap, Kurkin's arm broke. For a brief moment, Hyunseok allowed himself hope, but no, Kurkin's red energy flared up, flowing through his arm like some kind of evil battery recharge. Hyunseok's teeth clenched as he realized the monster was far from finished. The crimson aura enveloped Kurkin entirely, and Hyunseok's eyes widened in horror. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered, his voice cracking. With one casual swing of his newly repaired arm, Kurkin sent Hyunseok flying across the arena. The crowd winced as he crashed into the wall with a sickening thud, a scream of pure agony escaping his lips. He slumped to the ground, coughing up blood, every nerve in his body screaming in protest. It's just like last time, Hyunseok thought, his vision swimming, the sensation of almost dying. Feels like every bone in my body is crushed. Hyunseok lay crumpled on the ground, body shattered, pride obliterated, and just as he was about to contemplate the virtues of a painless death, a soft voice cut through the chaos. "Stand up." His bleary eyes flicked upward to see Abelson, the silver-haired saintess, standing serenely, her face framed by an ethereal glow. She touched her lips, striking an adorably out-of-place pose that belonged in a romance anime, not a death arena. Hyunseok blinked. Can I really win?" he croaked, his voice barely a whisper. She smiled sweetly. "Of course you can." Her words hit him harder than Kurkin's fist ever could. Right, Hyunseok thought, fire reigniting in his chest. The fight isn't over until it's over, and I can't embarrass myself in front of the girl I asked out." He gritted his teeth, his trembling body protesting as he forced himself to his feet. With every agonizing movement, his battered frame began to crackle and glow, bathed in blue energy. The crowd gasped as Hyunseok struck a pose that could only be described as gear second with extra drama. "If my bones are broken," he growled through clenched teeth, "then I'll cover them with mana like armor." Kurkin's eyes widened in confusion, which was fair considering his opponent looked like he just walked out of a shonen manga. Hyunseok lunged forward, his body a blur of motion, his fists glowing like miniature suns. The system windows popped up one after the other. Mana control increased from F to E. Mana control increased from E to D. The notifications fueled him as he leapt into the air, his fist blazing with blue energy. "Saintess!" he shouted mid-flight. "Please go out with me!" Kurkin barely had time to register the absurdity before Hyunseok's glowing fist slammed into his head. The ground shattered beneath the monster's face as he hit the arena floor like a meteor, creating a crater so deep it could have had its own zip code. But of course, Kurkin's dark red aura began swirling again, and the beast stirred, his body twitching as he attempted to rise. Hyunseok smirked, his fists glowing anew. "You're not getting up," he said, a dangerous edge in his voice. "Instant obliteration can shake the ground with its pressure. I focused all that pressure on your head." Kurkin froze, realization dawning that his body wouldn't obey. Hyunseok raised his fist and began pounding Kurkin like a man trying to get ketchup out of a stubborn bottle. With each punch, his grin grew wider. "It's working," he shouted triumphantly, ignoring the horrified gasps from the crowd. Up in the stands, Hemis narrowed her eyes in irritation. "What, did you teach him that?" she asked Reed Ronen, her tone dripping with disdain. Reed Ronen, utterly dumbfounded, shook his head. "No, I've never seen anything like this." Meanwhile, Hyunseok, drenched in sweat and wobbling on his feet, muttered between punches. Date, 1 night, 2 days, dinner and hotel included. Hemis arched a brow, then broke into a devilish grin. "A hero in the demon army," she mused aloud, her voice dripping with malice. "You remind me of someone I hate, Choi Hyunseok." Her grin widened as she leaned back, amusement dancing in her eyes. "This is going to be fun." Hyunseok woke up with a scream loud enough to wake the dead, or at least annoy anyone within a mile radius. His head whipped back and forth. Where? What happened? Did I die? Am I in hell?" Rachel, sitting nearby, rolled her eyes so hard they practically did a full rotation. "Where do you think, genius?" "It's your cabin." Hyunseok blinked at her, his mind racing. "What about the fight? And the EXP?" Priorities, clearly. Rachel crossed her arms, exasperation dripping from her tone. "You won. The saintess healed you and left. Congrats, hero. Now stop screaming." Ignoring her sarcasm, Hyunseok fumbled to open his system window like a kid checking their grades after an exam they barely studied for. His eyes lit up as he scanned his stats. "I leveled up so much. My level went up by 12, and my other stats increased too." Rachel sighed dramatically. "I could have healed you too, you know." But Hyunseok wasn't listening. His eyes caught something new on the screen and his jaw dropped. "Wait, mana control increased by 2? What's this about?" Rachel froze, her eyes wide. "Mana control? Are you serious? I've never seen that before." Hyunseok waved dismissively. "You're overreacting again." Her face turned red with anger, and she jabbed a finger at him. "What do you mean? Mana control doesn't improve easily like other skills. It's a freaking miracle." Before he could retort, Rachel hurled something at him, a letter. It smacked him in the chest with the grace of a brick. "What is this?" he asked, bewildered as he caught it. The scene shifted to Abelson's prison, where the saintess stood by her window, staring at the stars. Her expression was serene, yet her thoughts were anything but. "That was unnecessary," she muttered, recalling Hyunseok's ridiculous antics during the battle. Despite herself, she couldn't help but reflect on him. "He's so strange," she mused. Discovering mana in 3 days, learning combat arts. A knight would need at least a month for that. A normal human couldn't do it. He has unknown potential. Her voice trailed off, her brow furrowing. But his personality is a little weird, maybe a lot weird. She stood and grabbed her cloak, draping it over her shoulders as she continued her inner monologue. Maybe a god answered my prayer, or maybe it was purely his talent. It doesn't matter. He changed his fate by winning that battle. As she approached the door, determination in her step, she whispered, "Maybe he's the hope I've been searching for." Knocking on the door, she waited as a gruff voice called out, "What do you need, saintess?" "I have a favor to ask," she said calmly. "I want to go on a walk." Back in his cabin, Hyunseok unfolded the letter. As he read its contents, his face transformed into something akin to a romantic anime protagonist discovering love for the first time. "See me in the courtyard after sunset." His eyes darted to the bottom of the note. "Abelson?" He shot to his feet, the letter trembling in his hand. This is... His mind raced, flowers blooming metaphorically in his imagination. "It's a triple S-rank ask-out letter," he exclaimed, his voice cracking with excitement. The moon hung low on the horizon, casting a soft glow over the courtyard where Hyunseok stood, a trembling ball of nerves. He gnawed at his nails like they owed him money, muttering to himself. Date. It's a real date. What do I do first? Ask for her number. Wait, no, they don't have phones here. Pen pals? That's it? Pen pals! From above his shoulder, Rachel, his perpetually disgruntled fairy companion, groaned. "Are you seriously losing your mind over this? Just stay in your room and spare the world your awkwardness." She zipped around his head, tiny fists on her hips. "You always ignore Rachel's advice. One day it's going to get you." "Shh." Hyunseok clamped a hand over her mouth as he heard approaching footsteps. Panicking, he shoved Rachel into his pocket, ignoring her muffled protests. Then came Abelson, radiant as ever in the moonlight. But Hyunseok's initial joy turned into a full-blown panic attack when he saw who she'd brought with her. 2 hulking demon guards. Their glowing red eyes screamed bad news, and their towering forms looked ready to squash him like a bug. Hyunseok's voice cracked as he greeted her. You're here, Ms. Abelson." His gaze flicked nervously to the guards. By the way, who are these, charming gentlemen behind you?" Abelson's face remained composed. "They're my escorts. I wasn't allowed to come out alone." Hyunseok turned his back to her, dramatically wiping away an invisible tear. "Of course, Miss Abelson is a saintess. Captured by the Demon King's army, it's only natural she's surrounded by guards." From his pocket, Rachel's muffled voice broke through. "Oh my God, stop monologuing. You're not in a soap opera." Abelson sighed, her tone laced with amusement. "Shall we take a walk?" A few moments later, they were strolling under the moonlight, Hyunseok doing his best to appear calm while the demon guards loomed behind them. Their menacing red auras sent shivers down his spine. His thoughts spiraled. It was already nerve-wracking enough trying to make small talk with a saintess. But now I've got these 2 murder machines breathing down my neck. Sweat poured down his face as he tried to think of something clever to say. Abelson broke the silence. "Mr. Choi Hyunseok," she began, her gaze turning to him. "You're a hero, aren't you?" Hyunseok froze, his eyes nearly popping out of his skull. "How do you know that?" Abelson's lips curled into a soft smile. In our world, only heroes and demons have black hair. It wasn't hard to figure out. Rachel finally escaped his pocket, flying up to glare at him. Wow, and here I thought you were the only one dumb enough not to connect the dots. Abelson chuckled lightly. It seems like you have a lot of questions about me. Please, go ahead and ask. Hyunseok's face turned beet red. He fumbled for words before blurting out, "Is a man like me possible?" Rachel facepalmed so hard it echoed in the quiet courtyard. Oh no, he's doing that thing again. Abelson's expression shifted into mild annoyance. Whoa, you're really bold. Before she could finish, a shout shattered the moment. Choi Hyunseok! Hyunseok flinched as Reedrun barreled toward them like a furious freight train. Sir Reedrun! He exclaimed, his heart sinking. In his mind, he groaned. Damn it, he ruined the mood. Reedrun puffing like he'd just finished a marathon. The commander wants to see you right away, so follow me, Hyunseok. Hyunseok's response was as graceful as you'd expect. He immediately burst into tears, waterfalls streaming down his face. Now? Does it have to be right now? I was just… Behind him, Abelson massaged her temples like she was regretting every life decision that had led her to this moment. Can I really trust someone like him? The scene shifted to Hemis's office, where she sat behind her desk, her devilish grin practically radiating menace. She greeted him in a voice dripping with mockery. I enjoyed watching your duel, Choi Hyunseok, seeing how you keep coming back from the brink of death every single time. Our great hero's lifeline is truly indestructible. Hyunseok, still drenched in sweat from sheer anxiety, stammered to thank you, Lady Hemis. She cut him off by pointing a sharp, manicured finger at him. Do you remember what I offered you? His voice cracked as he replied, Yes. In return for fighting the opponents you've chosen, you promised to protect me. Hemis nodded, her grin widening. That's right. And? Hyunseok gulped. And that I would become an executive under your command. The grin turned positively feral. Honestly, the executive thing was something I said for fun. I didn't think you'd last long enough for it to matter. She leaned forward, eyes gleaming. But I've changed my mind. Hyunseok blinked in confusion. Changed your mind? How? She pointed at Reedrun, who stiffened like he'd just been caught sneaking cookies. Reedrun, didn't you say Choi Hyunseok is a talent capable of becoming the commander of the Demon King's army? Reedrun looked like he wanted to evaporate. Well, yes, Lady Hemis, but Hemis ignored him, her grin spreading wider. So instead of another duel, let's try something else. We can't have someone with your potential languishing as a mere platoon leader, can we? Hyunseok's nervous sweat turned into a full-on downpour. That sounds promising, but what does that mean? Hemis didn't miss a beat. As you know, the cooking company suffered a devastating blow recently. The disruption in the meat supply to the executives is getting dire. At this rate, we might end up eating each other. Hyunseok's sweat somehow doubled. I understand the problem, but why are you telling me this? Hemis leaned in closer, her voice a whisper of doom. From now on, you are the squadron commander. Hyunseok's jaw dropped. Pardon? To be specific, Hemis continued, her smile sharper than a knife. The cooking squadron commander. Hyunseok's brain short-circuited. What? But Hemis clapped a hand on his shoulder, her grip like a vice. Pick whichever cooks you want. By the day after tomorrow, return the kitchen to normal. His face twisted into a look that could only be described as you've got to be kidding me. Hemis tilted her head, feigning innocence. You can do that, right? Hyunseok's words came out in a mangled mess. I'll do my best. The scene shifted outside, and Rachel, ever the loyal cheerleader of sarcasm, was circling Hyunseok like a tiny judgmental comet. "Who do we have here?" she said, her wings flapping with extra sass. "Isn't he the Demon King's army squadron commander despite being a hero? Are you happy? Huh? Are you happy because you're so successful now?" Hyunseok ground his teeth and retorted, Yeah, I like it so much I could die." His sarcasm was practically dripping from his words as he shoved open the kitchen door. "I see you're still holding a grudge. But if we did this because we wanted to, it wouldn't be so bad, right?" Rachel huffed, her tiny arms crossed. "Nope, still mad." Ignoring her, Hyunseok adjusted his power measurement goggles and muttered, "Fine. Let's start the squadron commander's important work." Inside, a menacing-looking goblin with a face like he'd been chewing on nails was doing something shady. Hyunseok frowned. "Hey, punk, what are you doing?" The goblin spun around, his ugly mug twisted in disdain. "Punk, has the meat-grilling slave finally lost it?" Hyunseok's eye twitched. "Slave! Slave!" Before the goblin could blink, Hyunseok's foot connected with his face like a meteor. The goblin went flying, crashing into a stack of pots with a resounding clang. Hyunseok stood over him, radiating pure rage. "From now on, punk, call me commander, got it? Now gather everyone, right now!" Moments later, a ragtag group of goblins and monsters stood before him, looking like the worst talent show lineup in history. Hyunseok pinched the bridge of his nose, his goggles askew. "Let's see. The average combat power here is around 2,000. The strongest is 3,500. But why? Why are there so few of you left?" He closed his eyes, calculating. "Weren't there 300 of you? Now there are less than 20. What happened? Oh, right. If I don't fix this, I'll be killed by Hemis." With a deep sigh, Hyunseok barked, "Raise your hand if you know who I am." A brave goblin shouted, "Choi Hyunseok." Another chimed in, "BBQ machine." A third goblin, grinning ear to ear, raised his claw. "You're wrong. That guy is a delicious human." Before the words fully left his mouth, Hyunseok was airborne. His foot landed squarely on the goblin's chest, launching him into the wall. The impact cracked the stone, leaving the goblin dangling like a badly placed picture frame. Hyunseok dusted himself off and slowly rose, glaring at the rest. "I am your commander, you stupid bastards. Commander, got it?" He shoved an official-looking letter in their faces. "This is my order as the cooking squadron commander. From now on, treat me like heaven or you'll wish you were dead." He scanned the group, his voice laced with barely concealed frustration. "Now, who knows why there are only this many of you left? Stand up and explain." One goblin soldier, trembling like a leaf, saluted and squeaked. They went out hunting without any orders and got eaten by demonic beasts." Hyunseok sighed heavily, muttering, "Of course. Makes sense since you guys charge at everything head first." "Typical. All right, last question. Who's the best cook here?" The group shouted in unison. "It's Gil Rome." Hyunseok's eye twitched again. "You mean that guy?" He pointed to the goblin he'd kicked earlier, who was still sprawled out in a heap. They nodded enthusiastically. Hyunseok rubbed his temples. "Fine. Galrom will be the vice commander. Any objections?" "No, sir." "Good, then disperse." As the group scattered, Hyunseok slumped onto a crate, resting his chin on his hand. A kitchen this size needs at least 200 people to function, and I have to gather that many in one day. His eyes darkened as a single thought took root in his mind. As expected, there's only one way to handle this. The scene shifted to the next day, where Hyunseok stood with a devilish grin plastered across his face. He was holding Bobo. Rachel, fluttering beside him, was not amused. She crossed her tiny arms and snapped, "That way is Bobo. Are you seriously planning to threaten them with that?" Hyunsok's grin widened to borderline lunacy. Oh, Rachel, this isn't just any plan. This is the plan B, the ultimate fallback. Fallback to what, exactly? Rachel yelled, exasperated. Ignoring her, Hyunsok began scanning the area like a predator stalking his prey. His internal monologue buzzed with scheming. There's only one condition for choosing cooks, he thought, his grin sharpening. Sons of bitches who are easy to replace, and those who can. Suddenly, his eyes lit up like he'd spotted the golden goose. Oho found it. Without warning, Hyunsok launched himself forward and delivered a precise, devastating kick to a goblin soldier's face, mid-sentence completing his thought aloud. Yea, those who can never rebel against me. The goblin hit the ground with an audible thud, clutching his face in shock. Hey, mole, Hyunsok said with an air of dominance that could make a tyrant blush. You're a chef now. Congratulations. The goblin blinked, his brain still rebooting. Mole? What the hell did you just call me? This insolent human has gone crazy. I'm going to... Before he could finish, Hyunsok's foot connected squarely with his chin. The impact sent the goblin sprawling backward like a broken puppet. Stop acting up, Hyunsok said with a dramatic sigh, like a parent dealing with a stubborn toddler. The goblin sat up, clutching his jaw, still processing what the hell just happened. Hyunsok crouched down to his level, his tone suddenly softer, but not in a comforting way. Still, congratulations. You're the first recruit today. Do you know what that means? The goblin stared back, his expression a cocktail of pain and confusion. What does it mean? Hyunsok's grin turned downright sinister. It means you get the honor of seniority, and you know what the military is all about, right? The goblin blinked, shaking his head slowly. Hyunsok leaned in closer, his voice dripping with sadistic glee. Downward harassment. If you join now, there aren't many people above you to beat the crap out of you. So, he gestured grandly like a king bestowing a knighthood. Go and bring some juniors to get beaten up in your place. The goblin's confusion deepened. Juniors? Hyunsok's smile turned blindingly bright. Exactly. Friends, pals, recruits. Bring me 5 of them. Do that and I'll cut you a deal. In the future, when everyone else gets hit 10 times, you'll only get hit once. He crouched lower, holding the goblin's battered chin gently, like a deity comforting a devoted disciple. Think about it. 1 kick instead of 10. Isn't that a bargain? The goblin stared at him, his battered face slowly morphing into horrified understanding. Rachel, hovering above the scene, shook her head in disbelief. I can't believe I'm watching you pitch a pyramid scheme for cooking recruits. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chaos, smash that like button and subscribe. He's gonna need the support to survive this mess.